Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to go dive real deep into the draft. Of course, the New Orleans Saints will be on tap, and we've got a great guest for you tonight to break it down. He is the Saints columnist for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Larry Holder joins us on the program tonight. Larry, welcome. As always, thanks so much for being with us. Certainly
Absolutely.
Appreciate the time.
Glad we're able to talk football. Last time I was on, we talked a lot about Will Smith.
Yeah,
yes.
no, and that, again, a heartbreaking story still today. But yeah, at least we get some football in tonight.
Yeah.
We'll go to the phone lines at the bottom of the hour, so you have questions or comments for Larry. Again, hold those till the bottom of the hour if you would. Larry, before we get started, tell the folks a little bit about NOLA.com, Times-Picayune, of course, what you guys have going over there. I know wall-to-wall coverage on the Saints, but doing a little Kentucky Derby this week as well, huh?
Well, there's the Saints connection there, too. Yeah. And my colleagues, Jeff Duncan and Catherine Terrell, are up in Louisville, as are Tom Benson and Gail Benson and Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis, and they're up there. But, we're just rehashing the draft moving forward. Of course, rookie minicamp is next weekend. And all of it wall-to-wall. You know it. Everyone knows it. NOLA.com, video, podcast, chats, stories, columns, analysis. We can't produce enough Saints content for the starving fans out there.
And believe me, fans are starving for it, especially now the draft is over. They want to be able to get a feel for what the Saints got in the draft, what they got in undrafted free agency. And there's never a dearth for Saints talk or Saints conversation in this town. And because again, they are again, when you look at all that's out there, it's Saints, LSU, and then everything else is below that, that's for sure. Let's get into the draft. Sheldon Rankins, first pick for the New Orleans Saints. Your thoughts on that particular pick?
I think that pick, everyone predicted it, and everyone should have gotten it right in their mock drafts, locally, nationally, internationally, in Mars, whatever. Everyone knew Sheldon Rankins was going to be on the radar. And outside of DeForest Buckner, probably the best three-down defensive tackle in the draft. There's a reason why we saw the names early, like Alabama's A'Shawn Robinson, Jaron Reed, maybe an Andrew Billings, some other names that have come and gone because those guys aren't necessarily three-down guys. I don't want to put the comparison of Rankins to Cedric Ellis because some people have mixed feelings about Cedric Ellis, yet he is the last guy I can really, truly think of within the Saints roster that was considered a three-down defensive tackle. And Sheldon Rankins, power, quickness, you name it, I think he can develop into a very good pass rusher. And he's not the fat guy. He's the bulky guy. I mean, he is rock solid and no character problems. Everyone raves about him. And the Saints said how the draft fell. Usually there's some curveballs, but at least in their eyes, the people that were available were the ones they anticipated being available, probably outside of Laramie Tunsil.
Right.
But Sheldon Rankins makes a ton of sense. And you look at that pick alone, and you got to say the Saints did a pretty good job in the draft.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's a guy, we've been hearing the moniker plug and play. But he is a guy that you can say, when he comes in, he's got a legitimate chance to start for this team. Not just make an impact, but start for this team as well.
He better start. Yeah. I think that's you don't want 2 years in a row where your first-round pick
amen to that
doesn't sniff the field. I think Sheldon Rankins comes in day one and is within that starting group, the starting front four, Cam Jordan, Rankins, probably John Jenkins, and then who knows who else on defensive end, which I'm sure we're going to get into in a little while. But no, he is someone, plays immediately, just like, say, Brandon Cooks in 14, Vaccaro in 13. These guys are going to play right away, and they need Rankins to be. Everyone likes to compare him to Aaron Donald. maybe liken him in size to a Geno Atkins. If he plays anywhere near that, the Saints defense will improve.
Yes.
Now, how far will they improve? That obviously remains to be seen.
It still is one of the toughest positions in the NFL when you make the move from college to pro, interior defensive lineman. It's the toughest one to adjust to.
Oh, absolutely, because you're dealing with seasoned guards, seasoned centers, even if you have to deal with a tackle at times, which Rankins might, because he'll probably be that 3 technique, dealing with outside guard shoulder and dealing with some tackle at times.
Yes.
But he has all the moves. He has quickness, power. You look at someone in our comment section put up a video of the DallasCowboys.com. One of their scouts on their website did a breakdown of tape on Rankins at the Senior Bowl, and they had some of the top guards there.
Right.
And he was just toasting them every move, you name it, and it kind of opens your eyes, and you say, "Wow, no wonder Rankins moved up so quickly after that and stayed put, because he's legitimate."
Everyone I've talked to, either on this show or the radio show, that had a chance to be at the Senior Bowl, got a chance to eyeball these guys, talked about his dominance at the Senior Bowl, which, as you mentioned, really moved him up the draft boards. And if he can be anything like that, as you said, I think he is a. I think he's a can't miss pick now as it is, unless there's an injury. Just he has all the measurable. They call it the checking all the boxes.
Absolutely.
And it certainly looks like he has.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the second round. I was pulling for Jaron Reed at that point. I thought, okay, look. You need so much help along the defensive line, especially in the interior of the defensive line. It looked like a no-brainer coming out of Alabama. Of course, the Seahawks loved him. They end up trading up to get him. But with that said, I'm not unhappy with the pick of Michael Thomas. With the retirement of Marcus Colston, there was a need for a wide receiver. I don't know if I'd have went for the receiver there. But if you've watched this kid in college, and I did, he is going to be a nice pro player, and he is a guy that I think could fit into the Saints system. Why don't you break him down for us?
You look at what he did in college, and you look at his last 2 years, very consistent numbers, 9 touchdowns, 18 total in the last 2 years, and he really did it with musical quarterbacks. You go with Braxton Miller, you had J.T. Barrett, and then you had Cardell Jones, and the fact he was able to be consistent, even though at times the quarterback, you're dealing with different styles and types of guys with that. And the way it broke down, I'm sure the Saints would have liked to have, say, taken pass rusher there. The run of pass rushers went early in the second round. You saw it flying off the board once the Noah Spence, the Emmanuel Ogba, guys like that were flying off the board. You kind of knew, the Kevin Dodds,
yes.
You knew that position was going to dry up. And I know the Saints have been really high on Michael Thomas for a long time. Really, we started learning this around combine time when they were really high on him. And there was a lot of comparisons in the draft media world with Treadwell and Thomas. And even people saying, look, Thomas might be a better pro than Treadwell.
I think he could be.
Right. And there's a need there. I don't know necessarily. I'm with you. You wouldn't have thought maybe a wide receiver there. And I would have thought maybe they would have gone with more of a burner type wide receiver at some point. But if you get this type of guy, you'd hope it would leave Brandon Cooks to be that burner type, even though he's going to be jack of all trades.
Right.
But I know people staring right at that pick were thinking Cody Whitehair, the guard. And they passed.
Right.
And so maybe they thought down the line they could get another guard because they had some decent guards that would fall back in the draft. And it's funny, old Saints friend Ryan Pace takes Cody Whitehair, and so I'm sure Saints fans are wondering, no, why did we take him? But look, I don't have a problem with that pick because you knew they were going to take wide receiver at some point. Pass rusher dried up. Defensive tackle kind of dried up. Reed went before that. I would have not had a problem with them taking them there either. And so wide receiver, Michael Thomas specifically, was going to be there. It was kind of their target within that area all along.
Von Bell was the second round pick. Personally, I don't like trading up because what happens is if it is a bust, then you've given up 2 picks or more to be able to get into that spot. But with that said, I like Von Bell. I liked him at Ohio State. That's another guy, if you watch Ohio State football, was all over the field. He's got, a reputation recently of not being a hitter. I didn't see that in his first couple seasons over at Ohio State, but I did see a guy that was around the football, a ball hawk. And depending on what's going to happen with the future of Jarvis Byrd, obviously that may be a pick that you move in there. But at the very least, he's a guy that can come in and play the slot receiver, so you'll see him in nickel dime position. So the player itself, I like. I don't like trading up, but with that said, I like Vonn Bell. Your thoughts?
Oh, I do like him as a player. And it's someone where the Saints go to Ohio State Pro Day. They're there talking to Thomas. They're there talking to Bell. Heavy interest. Obviously, they had a ton of good players. So they knew some of their areas. You figured safety would be a pick. You have no more Raphael Bush. They cut Vinny Sinceri. That shows you they're definitely getting a safety somewhere. And Sean Payton saying that even at 47, they tossed the idea it was between Thomas and Bell were within that cloud. And so that in that case, you figure if you're the Saints, New England's got 2 picks, maybe you can move up because Bell's there's probably not going to get to you in round 3. And so you got a good relationship with New England. Call them, see what they want. Okay, so even you basically still got 2 picks in day 2. And Vonn Bell is someone, as you said, has probably the best cover skills of a safety within this draft. Depends on what you think about Jalen Ramsey. I mean, he's better overall, but still, Vonn Bell is not that far off. And I don't care if he doesn't touch anyone, if he's not a thumper. If he's back there being Ed Reed and picking off 1,000,000 passes, I think that's all that really matters.
Something they really lack since Sharper left, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I know, even though you don't want to say his name, but that's true. And he wasn't hitting anyone either.
No, he wasn't.
No. And so I got no problem with the pick. And again, he would not have been there, and they had the grade at 47th overall. So if you can get him at 61, in their eyes, it's a good move up for them.
David Onyemata is their 4th pick. Again, the 4th round. They give up 2 5s to get him. Your thoughts on that now? If you would kind of break him down for us. I don't think a lot of people know a lot about him except what we've regurgitated and what we've learned so far, but talk a little bit about the kid from Canada.
It's funny you say that because I did my instant reaction, a little column right afterward. I called the pick a head scratcher because they gave up some of these picks. You go get a guy it's not Akeem Hicks from Canada.
Right.
It's a guy who is from Nigeria, never played football before he got to University of Manitoba, and this is the guy. It's not Akeem Hicks who was supposed to play at LSU. Different, totally different. So don't compare that. Now, he's an ox, big guy, powerful. I mean, 33 reps at 225.
Strong.
He's a strong guy. And at least when Sean Payton comes up and, Sean Payton went on NFL Network and started talking about this. They see him as an end in the base defense and move him inside in passing situations. If the fact that that's where you see him, I kind of think that makes a little bit more sense because you've got no end. And we've talked about it. That's going to be a big need. And they're looking at him at that spot in the base and then probably Kikaha, Abali, whatever. But he's certainly not polished. You don't know what you're going to get from him. You don't know if he's going to stay at 300 pounds because he could get hefty. I'm sure they're going to work his tail off.
Yes.
And they're going to want him to play slimmer. But you don't know what he has. You don't know what he brings. And I want to get my eyes on him. I'm sure the Saints want to get their eyes on him. But it's definitely the head scratcher of the draft class because of the unknown factor, because you move up again and you don't know what you got.
Right. Now, Daniel Lasco was the final pick. Injured last year, but the year before, very, very productive for Cal. Where do you see him fitting in with the Saints?
And you get to the 7th round pick, people might say, oh, they only have a need for a running back. Well, 7th round pick's always a crapshoot.
Right.
If you get a good player, that's good. It doesn't matter what position. I could see him competing for a roster spot. I don't know if he's necessarily return skills, so I don't know if you liken him to Marcus Murphy, of course, their 7th round pick from last year.
Right.
But I could see him, obviously he can catch the football out of the backfield and run the football when he's healthy. That's why he dropped all the way down.
Doubt.
He played with Jared Goff, and so he played in a pro-style offense, so I think that's a key. and I see him competing almost for the same touches as a Spiller, a Travaris Cadet. I think all of them, they want to use them in similar ways. I don't see him as a Mark Ingram. I don't see him as a Hightower. I see him more as that third down back and fighting for a roster spot. Look, if he plays well, it's legit. I mean, he can legitimately make it.
Right. Well, from what I've read, more of a gunner than a returner,
Right.
if he's going to make it make the team off special teams.
Right, and that's fine. I mean, the Saints could absolutely use that. Yeah, no question.
Well, I'm gonna read off some undrafted free agents because this is where I got excited. I got to be honest with you. The Saints have a reputation of allowing guys that could be able to compete for a job, which means undrafted free agents have as much of an opportunity to make the club as a veteran or as a draft choice. And because of that, agents seem to steer their players toward the Saints. And that's a good thing considering the problems with the salary cap, the misses in free agency, which have forced you in some cases to bring in cheaper players. The drafts that have kind of blown up in their face. Undrafted free agents, traditionally under Peyton have done well. Let's talk about the offensive linemen because this is where I'm kind of excited. And tell me the ones you think have a legitimate shot here. Riker Matthews out of BYU is an offensive lineman. Offensive tackle Avery Young out of Auburn. Joseph Cheek out of Texas A&M. Landon Turner, a guard out of North Carolina. Center guard Jack Allen of Michigan State. And center Marcus Henry out of Boise State. Of those players, who do you think has the best chance of sticking with this team?
I think the two that stick out right away, one's Landon Turner. A lot of people, including myself, had him at a time, maybe Saints looking at him in the mid-rounds.
Yes.
But fell out of the draft, known as a kind of a bullying guy. Pass protection is shaky. That's why you fall out. But they paid good money in the undrafted realm to get him. I think they knew he would be a priority in undrafted free agency. And then Jack Allen, two-time All-American at Michigan State. Not the biggest guy, and I think that probably is one of the reasons why he fell. Obviously a good leader.
Right.
But I think what you see in those 6 players, every one of them has played guard. Every one of them.
Yes.
I think that is a huge key because we know legitimately both guard spots are open. They need starters. They need backups. I think someone like Jack Allen could be that swing man we always see a lot because if Lolito wins the job, you don't want him worrying about center. Or if Calamete wins the job, you don't want him worrying about being a center. But it's something to where they are going strength in numbers. If they bring in 6, maybe 1 or 2 work out, and they consider it a success.
And I think a lot of fans are excited about Allen and Turner. Those are the names that stick out, and it'll be interesting to see as they get to minicamp and beyond. Let's talk about the wide receivers. Jared Dangerfield out of Western Kentucky, Jordan Williams out of Ball State, Tommy Lee Lewis out of Northern Illinois. Any of those guys stick out as maybe a chance on hooking up with the team?
I don't know necessarily if any one guy has an edge over the other, and yet you look at the receiving core, and who is the most experienced guy? It's Brandon Cooks.
Yes.
That should tell you something. And Brandon Cooks barely drink alcohol. He's probably about 22 years old. Well, drink alcohol legally.
Yes.
But you look at Willie Snead, Brandon Cooks. Now you got Michael Thomas, Brandon Coleman. Those are going to be your 4. Unless they bring in a veteran, which I would anticipate at some point they probably add a veteran. Last offseason, they had Josh Morgan. He was borderline, didn't make it. But you look at any of the guys behind them have no NFL experience that are currently on the roster. So I think any of these guys, it's a total crapshoot with all of these guys outside of below, say, Thomas/Coleman. So there's probably at least 2 jobs, I would say, could be up for grabs. Any one of these guys has a pretty good shot.
As exciting as the offensive lineman in undrafted free agency, it's just as exciting with the secondary. Some really good names here if you follow college football. At the free safety position, Trey Elston out of Ole Miss. Mike Caputo is a safety out of Wisconsin. At the cornerback position, Devontae Harris out of Texas A&M and Ken Crawley, cornerback out of Colorado. That's a nice group right there. I could see a couple of those guys making this team.
Harris probably the one that sticks out the most. He'll probably be the loudest. I know he is a chirper.
Yes.
And yet someone who could come in, and he's a smaller guy as far as tall but lanky, not a big guy. He's about 170 pounds.
Good player, though.
Absolutely, good player. But the bulk, lack of bulk,
Yes.
probably dropped him in the draft. I also like Ken Crawley. I think he's someone who, good size, good length. But yeah, I think that is kind of untested water for a lot of those players in that cornerback group. When you look at P.J. Williams, someone who you need to get a good look at. Damian Swann, can he overcome the concussion issues he's had? Can Keenan Lewis stay healthy? And look, Brian Dixon made it as an undrafted guy, beat out Champ Bailey a couple of years ago. So a lot of these guys, the Saints have no problem going with the guy they feel, not the name, the guy they feel is best with the job. And you can't have enough good corners on your roster.
We next go to linebackers. Dominique Travell out of UL Lafayette, Dylan Lee out of Alabama, Jeff Schottenheimer out of North Carolina.
Honestly, none of the three of those guys. They really stick out to me, and yet the Saints have certainly had some tradition getting some undrafted rookie linebackers. The guys who stick out to me the most, Jolon Dunbar and Jonathan Casillas. And so they have a history of making this happen. And there are some question marks at linebacker.
Absolutely.
And so that's why you add three guys. When you don't draft any, you add three more, bring them into the mix. To me, you would think one of those guys could stick as a practice squad guy at the minimum.
Right. They went to the SEC for the defensive line and undrafted free agency. DJ Petaway out of Alabama, Mitchell Lowen out of Arkansas.
Yeah, those two guys are more of that defensive end spot. About 270, I think both are about that weigh that much. And so they're looking to see, okay, A, can we get some depth behind Cam Jordan? B, we got to have someone compete at that spot with Bobby Richardson. He's an undrafted guy and just ended up starting. So, again, that side of the line at that end spot where you're looking for a first down guy, second down guy, I think any of these guys. And look, that's, again, the guy I don't like to mention, but Junior Gillette came through that undrafted rookie ranks and obviously was pretty good for decent amount of time.
Yes. The last one is Sione Homa. He is a fullback out of Michigan. It's funny, most teams are getting away from the fullback. The Saints still have a use for it, especially a multi-purpose fullback.
Right, and you look at who they have on the roster. Look, Austin Johnson, undrafted guy. Tobin Oparum, often on the roster. But that's like a special teams and fullback spot. You're hoping he could be more of a special teams guy. So look, overall, you look at the lot of guys, and there's a reason why on the internet they're being lauded because they've got some good talent there.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you can hear some names. And then they fall by the wayside because, look, there's a reason why they're drafted.
They all have flaws,
right?
And that's why they didn't get drafted. But with the right coaching, in the right system, these guys can play in the NFL. At least some can.
I'm sure a few will. And look, that offensive line.
Yeah.
Any of those six guys, they've got a shot.
Come on, they got to have a shot.
Right.
There's no doubt. Saints traditionally, at least from the outside looking in, they look like they target players. Like they see certain players they like. They're in their cloud. And they're going to try to their level best to get to them. That's one reason why we see them trading up in a lot of cases to get players. How do you think this draft was? Targeting players, best player available, or were they looking at need, in your opinion?
Well, Rankins was probably best and need.
Yes.
But I think what played a mini curveball was the Laramie Tunsil fall. And I believe Sean Payton, when he gets up on the podium after the pick, didn't expect Tunsil to fall. I mean, the gas mask bong. I mean, who expects that to come out on draft night or ever in humanity? But on an NFL Twitter feed, crazy. Except for maybe Johnny Manziel. But that probably gave them reason to, hey, let's talk about this. Or, hey, the phones are ringing. Maybe someone wants to move up to get Tunsil. Maybe someone wants to move up to get Paxton Lynch because he goes later on in the first round. But Rankins for sure is someone that best player, need, guy they figured would be there. Michael Thomas and Von Bell, both of those guys they definitely liked. There's no question. Now, would they be available within their realm? Obviously, that was the question. And Thomas, I don't think they had any problem taking him. But like you said, they liked Von Bell so much, they knew it would not be there.
Right.
So they moved up. and cost themselves a 4th-round pick. Kind of same thing with Onyemata.
Agreed.
Right. There were teams hot for him, Green Bay especially, and then Sean Payton got a quote-unquote tip. It's lucky that Sean Payton's agent also represents Onyemata, so they get the tip, hey, they're going to get my guy. Sean, you want to move up and get him? Okay, sure, so they do that. Right. And so, but yeah, they obviously have a vision for him, and it's at that need spot, defensive end. But of course, that pick is going to be more shaky than the others.
Veteran guard. I'm looking to and hoping that as teams start to look during rookie minicamp, they get into their veteran minicamp. A lot of times, teams start looking at their salary cap. They start looking at players, saying, you know what, this guy's a little bit older. I've got younger players I think we can move in at a cheaper price. They eat the bonus, and then they cut them. Is that the direction you think the Saints are going to go to maybe try to fill the guard position with maybe a veteran guard that is cut? Maybe are they looking to maybe make a trade down the line here? Are they going to stand pat? Is Andres Pete a guy that might be a candidate for the guard position going forward? What do you think happens at guard with this team?
That's a good question. I think if you look at it right now, I would be kind of surprised if Tim Lelito didn't win one of those jobs. I do think he had an uptick at the end of last year after basically having his job threatened, both Sonny Okelemete and Andres Pete threatening. And I think of those guys, is probably the best one. Now, I don't know how much confidence it gives you, but to me, I think he is probably their best one. Now, as far as other veteran guards, I don't know if there is a Jonathan Goodwin type scenario that's out there. We all knew he was going to come back in 14. Didn't pan out, but we all knew that was going to happen. I don't know if there's a guy out there. A lot of people are enamored with Ronald Leary from Dallas. Lyle Collins basically took his job. And then you look at Matt Slauson, someone who the Bears just cut. Cody Whitehair is basically taking his spot. The early visits doesn't look like Slauson's visiting the Saints right now, so might not be the case. But I think you look at how many undrafted guys they brought in with the ability to play guard. It seems to me they could just stay in-house, find the best guys in that lot, and go forward and try to develop some of these guys and maybe try to find maybe a couple, look, a Jari Evans and a Carl Nix somewhere within your roster.
Andres Pete got a redshirt year last year. Could we see Andres Pete with another redshirt year?
If he can't beat out Zach Strief, possibly. I don't see why. If you can't beat him out, you don't put him in there. Right. And if he can't win a guard job, he's got to be a reserve again. And so you look at it and you're wondering, I'm sure, A, the Saints themselves, B, me and you, C, the rest of anyone who's a Saints fan, what on planet Earth did you do drafting Andres Pete?
No doubt. Agreed.
Absolutely.
And
it's fair.
And there's another follow-up from that. There's no way you draft Tunsil this year because you draft Pete last year. Absolutely. Same type of position. So, again, if you didn't go for Pete last year and did go for the defensive player, Tunsil falls to you this year, there may be more of an appetite to go after a Tunsil. But at that point, you're kind of like, what am I going to do now? I'm going to bring another tackle in. I had a first-round pick last year. He couldn't even get on the field at that point. Does he have the ability to move inside? We don't know that. I thought he played pretty well on the inside, but Pro Football Focus didn't. Some of the guys that break this film down on a week-in, week-out basis thought he was a little bit shaky at the guard position.
He was hit or miss.
Right.
He was against the Texans, he was terrible. J.J. Watt destroyed him. But it seemed like he would have a step forward and then have a step back. It's obviously that he is not comfortable. It is not his natural position. And
so we'll see. Look, I think this whole draft class from last year, I think we're going to find out a true litmus test on them. They got a year in the league now, even if they got a redshirt year like a Davis Tull did, like a P.J. Williams did, or even an Andres Pete who didn't get on the field, those other guys because of injuries. They've had a chance to digest the system for a year. It should almost be second nature when they get on the field. They shouldn't be worrying about X and O's, where they need to be. So I think we get a true feel for if these players are legitimate NFL players and can come in and contribute, or was this a situation was we're up against the cap, we needed to bring in as many cheap players as we could, and you know what? We went the draft route and the undrafted free agent route to be able to cover for the lack of being able to go out and to be able to get free agents into New Orleans.
There's no question. you look at the 15 class, you need to see development now, as opposed to the 16 class. There doesn't need to be this urgency for those guys, except, I mean, Rankins needs to contribute. You love to see Michael Thomas contribute. You love, if you're a Saints fan, you love Von Bell to get out there and pick off passes. But all of those guys are still on the roster. So they haven't given up on them by any means, and yet they've got to make some headway, especially Stephon Anthony going from year 1 to year 2, Kikaha going from year 1 to year 2, even like a Marcus Murphy. Look, he that was Sean's teacher's pet in training camp, and he got in the doghouse by the end of the season. And so those guys, look, even a Tyler Davison, someone who saw a lot of snaps. You didn't really hear about that much about him, but they would really like to see him in a situation where, guess what? If he can play third downs and be an effective piece, you want that. So, yeah, that class, it's paramount that they take a step forward and contribute well, especially, I'd say, Anthony and Kikaha.
Was it one of the reasons why they didn't feel they needed to be able to trade up to get a pass rusher because of Kikaha, because of Tull, because of Edebali, what they saw, glimpses of them last season, another year under their belt, that they maybe feel comfortable that they're going to have those guys as pass rushing specialists, or is that fool's gold in your mind?
Well, I think in particular they want Kikaha to be their third down guy. There's a reason why he was able to do it in college. That was his more natural spot. Putting him as a strong side linebacker was not what they wanted to do and what he felt comfortable doing. And I think the way that they avoided the, say, Shaq Lawson type, a three-down defensive end, I think that shows you their goal is have someone be solid on first and second down, and you get Kikaha in there and have him be a pass rusher. And I do think the pick with him, I do think the run on defensive end types, you look at Dodd and Ogba, they're those guys you would think would be potentially every down guys. Spence is more of a Kikaha in that you want him to be a pass rusher, but of course he comes with the baggage, and the Saints look heavily at him.
Right.
But I do think that they certainly feel Kikaha, and they want to at least try it, and they do feel like they need him to be that guy.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night with our live broadcast at 6 p.m. right here on WLAE-TV. Every Friday, you can catch us at 10 p.m. on WLAE-TV with our rebroadcast, and also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night. Larry Holder, Saints columnist for the New Orleans Times-Picayune and NOLA.com, is our guest. When we come back, we'll go to the phone lines, 866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisby's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbysrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is literally saving kids' lives.
It's a very special place. Friendly place.
To see the kids that they're helping on a daily basis was unbelievable.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude.
Discoveries made at St. Jude are freely shared.
The hardest cancer cases in the world go to St. Jude. We won't stop until no child dies from cancer.
Join us.
Join us
in supporting Hoops for St. Jude.
Visit stjude.org/hoops to find out how.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Larry Holder of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune is our guest tonight. 866-3200 is the phone number if you'd like to get involved in tonight's program. Larry, Teron Armstead gets an extension now. Reportedly $64.5 million over 5 years, $38 million of that an injury guarantee, $25 million of that fully guaranteed. I think, what is it, $11 million signing bonus?
Right.
Talk a little bit about that, and I guess the mechanism within that within that contract. Because a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, how can they sign Teron Armstead? They don't have money under the cap. But the way they set it up, it doesn't really affect them this year.
Well, that's why it's a 5-year extension, and you're still playing within the base salary of the final year of his rookie deal. And what you do is you give you give him the cash up front. The signing bonus, he could pocket that, and it counts later on down the line. But there's no question that the Saints knew this was going to come after him if they didn't get it done and pay him handsomely. Because if he would have hit free agency, he would have been the top guy, one of the top guys, no question about it. But you got it done with 1 year left in his contract, and you look at the average, he is number 3 of average salary within the NFL at left tackle now. And so it's one of the things that you don't have that lingering over your head when you've got the big contract lingering over your head. And look, the Saints have done this in the past. A couple times it's been successful. Cam Jordan, I think, was successful. They did this with Marcus Colston during his rookie contract. Junior Gillette, not so successful.
Right. Well, that has more to do with the character of the player than anything else. Which brings me to the next point before we go to the phone lines. They, especially since they got burned by Gillette, they seem to be going back to what they did in 06 when they built this roster. Character guys, okay, whether it's free agency in some cases or definitely in the draft. They're bringing in guys who, when you look at the guys off the field, you look at their character, team players, loving football, using a Peyton term, they got to check all those boxes off.
Right, and I do think the Saints felt pretty good about passing on Laramie Tunsil because they don't want to deal with that. They're already paying, not figuratively, literally paying for it right now with Junior Gillette. And so there's no question that has to be an area as a prospect. You better pass with flying colors, or the Saints aren't going to. They'll take you off the board. I don't know if Noah Spence or Robert Kimdichie was actually even on their board or not. Knowing the Saints, I would suspect they probably weren't on their board. But you want to check them out anyway in case you feel like, all right, this guy's really turned a new leaf. But hey, those guys matter, but they just don't feel like they want to take that risk. And the locker room, it's a different atmosphere.
Is it better? You've covered this team for a while now. Is it a locker room with strong character, strong leadership in it? I know that again, as you started to see this team erode, a lot of it was going with players they thought that had the ability, but they didn't care about the character issues. Are we seeing a much stronger locker room now? A locker room with more character? You're in there every day.
Yeah, I think yes. I do think that all they had to see was the purge of guys that might have been a headache.
Yes,
and it didn't matter, and so it doesn't matter the cost either. And you look at even someone like adding James Laurinaitis, definitely a leader as soon as he walks in the room. His ability is at top notch, maybe not as much as it used to be, but you look at someone like that and he commands instant respect. I do think it wasn't a lack of that last year with, say, Stephen Anthony at middle linebacker. It just might not have been a total fit for him. And I think that's why they're moving him to a different position. And so I do think, though, it is a place where because if you go 4-8, and you could easily go on in the tank, and they didn't.
Yes.
And so I do think that is something that they can kind of build off of, and that's internally. I mean, because like I said, that could have gone really south really fast.
Right, and you had a lot of young players who obviously were still fighting for jobs. I mean, you can't have a bunch of rookies or first-year players in a situation where they feel like, okay, I'm taking the last quarter of the season off. I just don't want to get injured. These guys are fighting for an opportunity to stay on this club, and I think that had a lot to do with last year as well. But it's good to hear about the character situation, because I think that was one of the downfalls of this franchise as the things hit the skids. Let's head to the phone lines. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, I'm glad you got Larry Holder here, because I need his opinion. And I ask this question all the time, but I'm going to kind of address it from a common man's point of view. When they review my contract as an employee every year, and then they say, well, Greg, we'll get back to you, I get a little nervous. So I'm getting a little nervous with Drew Brees. How does that all work in the NFL? Is Drew Brees nervous? Is it Saints or what? I mean, I get nervous when they say I'll get back to you, and I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, and that's a good layman's term thing to look at it. But when you're Drew Brees and you've produced and you also know, boy, what are they going to do if they don't have me? They may be the number one pick in the NFL draft. Here's where I think the situation lays right now. I'm willing to bet the Saints have a deal on the table. I'm willing to bet Drew Brees has a deal on the table. I'm willing to bet they're not close. It's probably similar to what they had to deal with in 2012 in that offseason. And now that there's no firm deadline, I think they're going to just stare at each other and play chicken. And Drew Brees, it's not like if things go south, he's going to be financially in trouble. So it's different from the layman's. It's different from me or you dealing with a contract.
Amen.
Absolutely. But I do think that there is no firm deadline with this thing. The next deadline is franchise tag time next year. And it's even more in play, even though no one on the Saints end wants any part of it being in play. But you took Teron Armstead off of that. He would have been the one you figured would have gotten the franchise tag.
Right.
Because you don't want to give it to Drew. So that's even more leverage for Drew.
Right.
That actually you get Armstead to do this. Well, I'll just hang out and I dare you not to tag me.
Right.
So it's going to come down to, I figure, next year.
Right.
It's weird to say that.
Right.
Now a deal could get done.
Sure.
But obviously we've seen it happen before. Nothing surprises me, but don't be stunned if this thing goes through the season, they play it through, and it's a major story next offseason.
No doubt. Now, let me ask you a couple questions about that before we go back to the phone lines. Someone said there's bad blood between Loomis and Condon. You buy that?
I don't know if there's bad blood. I think Tom Condon is just someone who's a tough negotiator. Look, he had Peyton Manning, and he's had big-time guys for several years, and they command big-time money. And so I don't know if it's necessarily bad blood, but I'm sure they're both looking at each other like, here we go again. But I think both sides are willing to wait it out. I mean, we know that Mickey's going to play hardball, and Tom Condon and Drew are going to play hardball, so these are some stern guys kind of staring at each other right now.
I got to believe the cost of a third franchise tag puts all the leverage in the Brees camp at this point, right?
Oh, no question, because the Saints, the last thing they want, they got Drew Brees for $30 million this year. Do they want him for $40 next year? And no, not the case. And if you have that contract and you have that franchise tag, that number sticks to you until you get a long-term deal done. So if you could do, say, franchise tag him in late February, you walk into free agency and that is attached to you until you tear it up and get a new deal, because that counts right away. Like what Jimmy Graham counted right away. Drew Brees, a few years ago, counted right away.
And that hurts you in the ability to go out and to bring in free agents when you're hoping next year you're finally going to get through some of these bad deals that really have kind of retarded your progress in terms of getting the top-notch free agents to come to New Orleans. You've had it, like I said before, they've kind of had to shop at Big Lots in a lot of cases. Got to get bargains to be able to come to New Orleans.
You're making my mother-in-law proud. She loves Big Lots. She loved it last time we were on. We talked about that. And I think she wants to be a spokesman. And
I am also a lover of Big Lots as well. You'll see me at a Big Lots near you. I guarantee that. And if they'd like to sponsor the show, we're all for that as well. Let's go to Brian in Metairie. Brian, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Brian.
I have a comment and I guess an opinion. First off, did we or did we not, I don't know, within the last year or so, get rid of our scouts and replace them? Because if we did, I think we need to do it again. I gave our draft a C-, and if the wind would have blew, it could have been a D. I love the first pick. I think Rankin's a good pick. I also love the defensive back. Well, what's his name? It failed me. You all just said it. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about, the Ohio State defensive back. Why on earth do we do a running back? And I know y'all have said, special teams. That's almost as silly as the quarterback last year. And I got one last question, too. Oh, yeah, and the guy from Canada, if that's not a reach, there is no such thing as a reach. But why? What does Peyton? We have not in years taken an LSU ball player. What is Peyton's dislike for LSU? I think the last ball player we got from LSU was Devery Henderson. I'm gonna sit back and listen, guys.
Thanks. As a matter of fact, it was Al Woods was the only pick during the Peyton era from LSU. You want, as a graduate of LSU, you want to take the LSU question first?
I don't think it has anything to do with Peyton disliking LSU. Come on, let's be real here. I think the Saints would have had no problem drafting Deion Jones. I don't think the Saints would have any problem if it would have fallen right. Drafted Jarvis Landry last year. They would have loved to have had Odell Beckham.
Right.
So I don't think it's anything to really have to do with that. But as far as grading the draft, I think if you're harping on the 7th round pick and it's a running back, I don't think you're grading fairly. And look, I gave it a grade, and it's what we do in the media. But obviously, we don't know how it really pans out.
Got to give it 3 years.
Right, exactly. But I don't think you should be judging the draft class on a 7th round running back. It does. That should not count as highly as if you love the first pick and you love the 3rd pick and you're down on the 4th pick and you're down on the 7th round pick. I think the other one should outweigh the other.
What about the turnover in the scouting department? There was a little bit of a change. Jeff Ireland obviously came in. How much influence do you think he's had on this draft? And then also the change in the scouting department.
I do think there's definitely been turnover in the scouting department. And I think you look at last year's draft, and overall, I don't think you can say all these guys are terrible. And that's kind of the point where we are right now, unfortunately. But I do think Jeff Ireland's definitely brought a good element to this thing, a different set of eyes, and someone who they trust. And let's see how 15 pans out. Let's see how this draft class pans out. And so, but yeah, there's definitely been a changing of the guard because of the drafts of 12. 13, you look at overall, it was a pretty good draft as far as talent. 14, obviously, was a total bust outside of Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. Let's go to Mid-City and Herm. Herm, thanks for calling Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, guys.
Hey, Herm.
Hello, I'm enjoying the show so far. My question is about Sheldon Rankins. It was a no-show at the draft. We didn't see him at home celebrating with friends and family. At some venues, celebrate with friends and family. Seems like the commissioner was kind of perplexed as to where was he. So I'll sit back and listen to what you have to say.
Okay, thanks. He was home.
Right.
And there was a reason behind that, right?
Yeah, he wanted to be with, I think, his grandparents.
Yes, they couldn't travel.
Right, couldn't travel. But that's kind of the guy he is. He's not this, let me go on stage and give Roger Goodell a bro hug and pick him up and throw him around and stuff. That's not who that is, and I think that's probably part of the reason why the Saints like him. But yeah, it's not a slide on Rankins. It's not a slide on the NFL. Sometimes people don't do that, and so that's it could be the other end. You could be Miles Jack sitting there forever. Right. You could be Aaron Rodgers sitting there forever.
Gosh.
We've seen some tumbles. Rankins, that's kind of the guy he is. So I don't think any side really had any issues with it.
There was a flirtation with Josh Norman. How strong of the flirtation do you think it was? And kind of give us just your overall thoughts on that scenario.
Oh, I think the Saints wanted him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But wanting him and wooing him and making a deal happen within the time frame was going to be pretty impossible. Yeah, Sean Payton says he called Drew Brees. And then Sean Payton says, well, we weren't going to get a deal done in 2 hours. No, you weren't.
Right.
So it's almost like, wow, you were hoping that Josh Norman would be so enamored by the phone call from Sean Payton that he would totally change his mind, and I just didn't think that was going to be viable. He was already in Washington, and they were going to give him money no matter what. Look, they made the playoffs.
Right.
They're in a bigger market. Josh Norman is quite the character, so I think he would like the bigger market, and yet there's no doubt the Saints saw him as in a rare position, knows the player, and figured, let's give it our best shot. But I think even though they were second, I don't know how close they really were. I just, too many things would have had to happen in such a short amount of time, and I don't think it was going to happen.
What do you think about Josh Norman, the player? Someone said contract year, nice player, maybe played a little above his head last year. Do you buy that?
I think he's a very good player. Now, I don't think anyone's worth that money. I just don't think. And if you're paying for that in free agency, usually it turns out poorly for you. And you look at the situation, something happened in Carolina. I don't know what it was, but it just doesn't go away like that. And that should raise a red flag. And Washington has had a history of spending on whoever.
Doesn't
and
matter.
See what happens.
Yep.
Albert Hainsworth is probably the number one person that people remember.
And the funny thing is, here in a smaller market like New Orleans, fans are pulling their hair out when you see a guy like Junior Gillette get all this money and then end up obviously not being a bust, but just being a bad character in the locker room and ultimately getting cut. In Washington, they don't seem to care. They'll throw money at anything at this point.
Dallas doesn't care.
Same thing.
Right.
You know, and with Dallas, the focus is different. You've got the owner who's the general manager, so he is willing to take chances on players that have character issues, or as he did in the draft, players that have injuries.
Well, he has no one to answer to.
To himself, but himself. And
Right.
he could care less what the fans are saying at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, it's his team.
Or the public or whoever.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
So, I mean, from that standpoint, that's a perfect scenario for a person that has, maybe character issues or injury issues, because that's the kind of team that's going to take a chance. Like the old Oakland Raiders under Al Davis. He did the same exact thing. No doubt.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's go to Wagaman and Michael. Michael, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Michael.
Yes, hello, folks. My question is, what do you think the Saints are going to do to upgrade their defensive coordinator spots? They got rid of Rob Ryan last year, and they kind of drifted through the rest of the year. I'd like to see them make a move to upgrade that.
Thank you for the phone call. I think they got their man, right? Dennis
Allen's certainly their man. They hope he is the upgrade. There's a reason why they brought him in last year. Basically, they didn't want to make the move to get rid of Rob Ryan right away because Sean Payton didn't want to look like he kept running through defensive coordinators, even though everyone knew it.
Right.
And Dennis Allen is probably I don't want to say maybe a 180-degree turn from Rob Ryan, but he's probably about a 150-degree turn, as far as Rob Ryan was known for wanting to be liked. And I think that was a lot of people in the locker room like that, but it's to the flaw of one of his flaws. Dennis Allen is no nonsense. All you had to see was when Allen and Brandon Brown are chewing each other out,
right.
Dennis Allen doesn't care. And so I think Dennis Allen is going to bring something to the table that we haven't seen, more of a no-nonsense type. Now, what can he do? I don't know. Can he work miracles? I don't know. But you look at some of the moves they've made, look, Sheldon Rankin should help. If Keenan Lewis can play better, that should help. Be healthy. I mean, not necessarily just play better. And then there are some question marks. I mean, what's Laurinaitis going to bring? Is Stephen Anthony going to take the Sam linebacker spot? Can Donnell Ellerbe be healthy? Look, I could go through every spot, all 11, and have a question about it.
Well, let me stay with the defense for a moment. Do you think now that they've made the move with Rankins that Kevin Williams still has a spot on this team? I mean, a veteran guy who played very, very well for this team last year. You don't know when obviously there's going to be a big drop-off here. Does he want to play? Does he want to come to camp? What do you think happens there?
Look, I think he's possible. You look at when he came in last year. He came in later.
Yes.
I mean, you're that old. You don't need to. He knows everything that needs to be known. I mean, so if they want him back, they could afford to sign him later. Could they do it? Sure. I think he actually had a pretty decent year last year.
I thought he did.
Played way more snaps, I know, than he ever thought he would.
He would, exactly.
Right.
Maybe the coaches thought he was as well.
Absolutely. But that was part of the problem on the defensive front. They didn't have anybody better. But look, it's a possibility. I would not discount it by any means.
You mentioned Laurinaitis earlier. Now that we've seen the draft class come in, where do you think Craig Robinson and Nate Stuper fit in? Two other linebackers they brought into free agency.
Stuper, I feel, is special teams. Could he play defense in a pinch? Sure. Now, I like the Robertson pickup. I think he is a legitimate starting caliber linebacker. He was pretty good in Cleveland.
I thought he was too.
He's pretty good in Cleveland, so much so that last year they tendered him in a second-round tender as a restricted free agent. And it's someone where, Donnell Ellerbe is porcelain, and he gets hurt. Robertson could step in immediately, and I don't know, you might not miss a beat. I do think that was a sneaky good pickup by the Saints. Yeah. You kind of had to do your homework on him because Cleveland is like the abyss, but I think it's someone who, if Ellerbe gets hurt, there's no question who you're going to put there. It's going to be him.
What about Nick Fairley? Now, again, the draft, we've seen the players that are coming in. Where do you think he fits in this? Is he a starter? Is he a rotation guy? Where do you think he fits?
I think he's probably a rotation guy. Now, if he's a starter, I think it's probably a good thing because he's playing better. Because I don't think they anticipate him being a starter. But there's the other side of the coin. If he's a starter, maybe when everyone else stinks.
Right.
So you hope that's not the purpose. But I think he's a rotational guy. I'm curious to see, though, where he fits in. You got a ton of bodies there. I want to see where all the jigsaw puzzle pieces fit.
The mindset for Stephon Anthony is get him out of the middle where he's got to make the calls, where he's got to be more cerebral. Let him loose. Let him out there. Let him play. Let him be athletic. How do you think that you saw him last year, and I thought he did a nice job at times, but at times he was swimming. Just being able to go out there and play football now, even at a new position, how do you think that works out?
I do think taking some of that responsibility off of his shoulders. I don't think it's a thing where he can't handle it. But you look at him compared to Laurinaitis, boy, wouldn't you like to have Anthony playing free and moving around and flying around everywhere and not directing people?
Right.
So I think that's probably a smart decision to do that. Now, how good are these guys going to be? I think that's a question mark. But look, Anthony, if and when he gets it, look, I think he can be a very good player.
All right, we've seen now kind of the dust settle here with free agency, undrafted free agency, and the draft. How much better do you think the Saints are? Now, on paper, we haven't seen these guys on the field yet, but just on paper, as you kind of look at the players that have come in, how the pieces may fit, where do you think this team is right now? Are they significantly better, or are they a little better, or are they about the same?
I'm not going above an 8-8 team right now. I just can't. I need to see it to believe it. I need to see that this defense is actually a little bit better. I need to see if their guards are viable to protect. I need to see if some of those guys, those injured guys, can come back. I need to see if there's a pass rush. I need to see if this offense grew and can be the offense we saw in the last few games rather than the one that was stagnant in the middle of the season and was only scoring 6 points and not doing much of anything. So at this point, I'm not. You're not going to catch me saying they got a winning record yet.
Right.
I think they got to prove it.
Right. And overall, undrafted free agents, the draft did a pretty decent job.
I think certainly better than some years.
Yes.
So I do think that is a place where I think you might not like some of the picks, but I do think overall you got to feel pretty good.
No doubt. Larry, thanks so much for being with us. Always appreciate it, my friend. That's Larry Holder, Saints columnist for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. We really appreciate his time tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also, in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets on Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night. Special thanks again to our guest, Larry Holder. Also want to remind everybody that I'm on the radio each and every weekday, 9:90 a.m., WGSO. Check us out 11 to 1. Also, you can check us out on the TuneIn Radio app and also at ericasher.com where you can listen live, download the podcast, and every single episode of Inside New Orleans Sports can be found at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and of course, also Philip Williamson and my director, William Hill. Thanks to Larry Holder. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll catch you right back here next Thursday night for another edition. My name is Eric Asher. Thanks for watching.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.